Hi everybody, and welcome to episode 121 of the IROCKNITTERS podcast. My name is Cori Eichelberger. I buy IROCKNITTERS everywhere on the internets. Our neighborhood is a-buzzing today with lawnmowers and people outside gardening, and so I can hear my husband's got some music playing in the garage, but he's leaving shortly. And the neighbor across the street is mowing, so I waited until he finished his side yard. I'm hoping that you'll be able to hear me well and it won't be a problem. I just want to welcome everyone. Hi, IROCKNITTERS. Welcome today. I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad I'm back. I had kind of a rough week. I've been having lots of fibromyalgia pain and not feeling great. I itch all over. Does anyone else have itch? It comes and goes. I have an appointment with an allergist, so coming up. I've never seen an allergist. With all these years, I've seen my general practitioner and I've seen my dermatologist, and they have tried different things, but I'm actually going to an allergist. I've been waiting 4 or 5 months to get in for this appointment, so I don't know. I just itch. I itch and itch, and then it'll go away, and then it'll come back. I'll get a rash. This week it was the back of my calves, just terrible, like burning on fire. I don't know. I have everything. I have all the things, and it's just obnoxious, and I'm tired of having all the things and being that person. And my husband is really tired of being that person. I tweaked my back this morning. We went to church, and I couldn't stand up and sit down. Yeah, I don't know what I did to my lower back. I'm just in rough shape. I'm trying to keep a positive attitude, but he did tell me this week that I was a little irritable, short-tempered, crappy. And then I know that my meds probably aren't working. So, does anyone else's husband tell them that they seem to be a bit on edge? He's nice about it, but I was having computer trouble. So last Thursday, I bought a laptop. I've never had a laptop. I've always had an iPad. I don't know why, after all these years of doing my business, I never had access on my laptop to my patterns on a laptop, right? I had my home computer, but if I wanted to look at them on my iPad, it was always a pain because Word on iPad is a mess and hard to, navigate, and you can't do corrections and then have them, So I finally just went and purchased one, and then I couldn't get my files moved over. So I spent 2 hours on the phone with the Geek Squad one morning last Friday. And then he was like, I think you need to talk to Microsoft. So I spent 2 hours in the afternoon on the phone with Microsoft, and I was really crabby about it. And then Saturday I spent a little more time. Yeah. And then my phone and our Wi-Fi in our house is really getting glitchy and slow. We have too many people in our neighborhood working from home now. Does anyone else have that, right? Where everyone's working from home, and so now your internet connection and your Wi-Fi just gets really slow and glitchy, and takes forever to upload. My phone won't, so then I use data on my phone, then I switch back to Wi-Fi. It's just, and so yes, I have been crabby. I have been irritable. And I said to him, if these things were happening to you, be so PO'd. It's not even a thing anymore, pissed off. You'd be so mad, and you'd be like, Cori, what can I do? Because I'm pretty tech savvy with like the home computer, and he will like ask me, and he's the IT guy. But anyway, so welcome. It's not raining today. We did have a miserable week of rain and wind, terrible wind for 2 days. And I walked with a friend. Start with a little Cori story. On Tuesday, I went to knitting at the library, and Chevy went to daycare. with Archie, his puppy friend, for 2 or 3 hours while I was there. So I said to the knitting group, where can I walk near here that I can get a little walk in, because I have to go to the grocery store quick and grab something before I pick up Chevy. And so I don't want to go home and come back in, and walk. Is there a nice trail? And they're like, well, you could just walk through the neighborhoods, which I can completely do, but I hadn't. And so I was like, okay. And then one of the gals, Laree, said, I'll walk with you. I walked here so I can show you. We can walk, and I can head you up the right way to a path. I said, great. She said, put your stuff in your car. So I did. And then we went up, and she said, I'll just go the long way. So we'll go up this way, across, and then I'll drop off at my house and you'll come back around. So I wanted to walk about 2 miles, and it was lovely outside. And she said, how are you with hills? And I said, good. I'm good with hills. I am not good with mountains. I am not good with mountainous hills in a neighborhood that shouldn't be there. We got halfway up this giant hill, and I was huffing and puffing and feeling so out of shape. And I know I don't walk super fast. I have short legs. She's way taller than me. So she was cutting her stride short. She knows about my hip replacement and that I've been working my way back up, but I am so out of shape. Like, I didn't realize, like, I'm out there walking, but I'm not getting good cardio, apparently. And so we got about 3/4 of the way to the top, and we both stopped. And then I mentioned it to some other knitters on Thursday who live in that area. And they're like, oh, Krupar Pond, yeah, the big hill. Oh, yeah. And the one gal who's in really good shape, who rides bike all the time, she's like, oh, it's a great hill to walk up with the dog. And I'm like, could you have dragged me on a little cart up behind your bicycle? Because I don't think you'd go up it on a bicycle. I mean, maybe you would, but there's just a pond at the bottom, and then you come back up. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful trail. We saw turtles and ducks. I mean, turtles already in Minnesota, that's rare to see them out already. But yeah, it was a really nice walk. But by the time I got back to the car, I was dripping. I was just hot, and my lungs were kind of burning. Like, they were like, because we kept walking, and yeah. So I have some work to do on getting this bigger body, this newer, bigger body of mine that I'm not used to, around and up and down the hills. Wow, that was incredible. You also have seen the 5 featured patterns this week: the Hi-Ho Wrap, the Hootenanny Hoodie, the I Rock the Beach Pontini, which is still super fun pattern to knit. If you are just looking for a little cover-up thing, like a smaller poncho to wear over a dress, there are several patterns on the project pages that people have done and made them bigger and longer, but the short little one is kind of the one I prefer. And then the I Will Sit With You shawl, which came out a couple years ago, and I told the story about my daughter sitting with the handicapped, children with handicaps in elementary school at lunch, and being welcoming and saying, I will sit with you. And then the kite tail shawl. So yeah, you'll have seen those at the beginning of this week's podcast. I need a haircut, and my hair is so long. And when I got up I should have taken a picture. When I got up this morning, it was standing straight up. And for me, this is long, but if this is all standing straight up, and I looked at my husband, I'm like, aren't you glad you married me? I'm like, I need a haircut. And he's like, I thought you had a haircut this week. I'm like, no, I'm being funny. Look at my head. Like, it was just whoosh, so tall. So now it's just super flat, and more product. And I'm thinking about going gray, folks. I'm thinking about just letting it go and going gray instead of doing this, dyeing my hair for the next 10 years. I think I'm getting there where I have enough gray in there that I could probably let it grow. So I'm gonna decide if it would just wash me out, especially in the winter when I'm so pale. I might feel like a ghost walking around with white hair and white face. We'll see. Okay, today I'm wearing my little dart necklace, double dart. But this one was made with Tilly Tomei yarn that has little silver beads in it. So I had 2 skeins of this yarn in my stash forever. And this is just that little ribbed necklace. I wore my Easter dress, my Gudrun Johnson. It's got all the colors in it this morning. And so I threw this on over it because sometimes it can be warm, you know, get warmer and warmer as the day goes on. And so I just left this on. I have a sweater, little sweater dress, and I put on little capri leggings underneath it. And I wore my orange sparkle tennis shoes because I'm still wearing a tennis shoes all the time. I have not gotten out my summer sandals. I have not gotten my toenails done. And I said to Ross yesterday, I suppose I should get my spring clothes up. So maybe he'll help me do that later, because that's multiple trips to the basement. Ugh. I've really pared down, but with my winter sweaters, all my hand knits in the closet, it's just too much to have it all. So I do put some of my short sleeved things in the basement on clothing racks. So I have to haul that up. And then I have a box of summer sandals, and then I have my winter boots that go down. So yeah, it's kind of a bigger job. He is loading up the boat right now. We have a fishing boat, a very nice fishing boat, and he's going to go fishing next weekend. It's a Minnesota opener, so he will go fish walleye with his brother for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So I will be on Chevy duty that whole time, which is a lot still. It's still a lot, can I just say. But yeah, he's leaving, so he's loading up the boat, and he's gonna go put it in the lake and run it, because he's had it, his brother stores it in his shed at a cabin in Wisconsin, a big barn kind of thing. And so Russ was gonna change the oil, and then one of the wires was broken. He figured that out yesterday. So he's loading up, and he's gonna take Chevy with him in the boat. I don't think it's the greatest idea, but I mean, whatever. He's like, well, you're podcasting. I'm like, yes, I am. But so at least he's gonna let him ride along to the lake. It's 7 miles. So they're gonna go and put it in and make sure it runs. So anyway, I put 2 sweaters of the week this week on the mannequins, and I'm gonna do a shawl that I don't have here. So let's start with that one. I was going through the list of all the shawls that I've talked about, that I've knit, and I have several shawls that I've gifted to my mom. And so I don't own them anymore. I don't have them here. And I know she would bring them to me or send them if I wanted, but you guys can just look at the pictures. The shawl that we're gonna talk about today that I gifted her in 2013 or maybe 2015, gonna say, is the Moondance Shawl by Jenna Krupar, who is Retro Lemon. If you guys have been around podcasts for a long time, you'll remember Jenna. She had the Retro Lemon podcast. It ran for a number of years. It was one of the first few podcasts that I watched for a while. I did meet her at ZK early on. And yeah, she had twin boys and a girl. And eventually, I think she got divorced and now is found the love of her life, and she's really into pinup girls and hot rods, and that I follow her on Instagram, so I see that she just got married. And so yeah, this was by her at the time. It was one of the first podcasters that I ever saw that like took the initiative and wrote their first pattern, right? Like I saw her do that, and I was like, wow, you know, you can do that. You can just decide to write one and write it up. And she had a few patterns. She has a cowl, and this is a lovely lace shawl. And oh, my notes. This is so funny, you guys. Mary B, who is knitting my shawl currently, in my knitting, in the knitting library knitting group. Listen to this, Mary. It says, I struggled in section A of this pattern. Knit one, yarn over knit one is into the same stitch. And I did the entire first section by making these 3 separate stitches. That is so funny, because on the edge of that shawl that she's knitting, which is the Legacy Park shawl, the increase on the edge is knit yarn over knit on the edges to do the increases for the crescent shawl. And she struggled and was doing it incorrectly. And so that's funny that I did it wrong when I read it in this pattern all these years ago. So I knit this in July of 2013. And then I kept it in my, and didn't wear it for a long time. And then I gave it to my mom for, I think for Mother's Day. And I have a picture of her wearing it here. And then I have a picture of it on the couch. It was red. It's really pretty. I did run out of yarn, but I knew when I started I would be cutting it close. I left out the 4 rows of the final chart and was still about 6 inches short on the cast off row. Well, isn't that interesting? And I used Wool Miza yarn, 575 yards, 150 grams in the weird different colorway. So yeah, it was a lovely shawl to knit. I would definitely knit it again. And I just have so many shawls. I should start gifting shawls. I should start giving away shawls on the podcast. Or maybe I should eventually do a de-stash for charity, right? Like sell them and give the money to charity, because you can't, there's no possible way I can wear the 80 shawls I have maybe. I use them in my classes, yes, but some of them I don't even use in class. So I could certainly I have some that I just keep for once a year kind of wearing. But this Moondance was really pretty. This is just a fingering weight, 24 stitches and 34 rows. The pattern's still available for $6. It came out in June of 2013, and she recommended using Wool Miza. That used to be the hot ticket yarn to get, like the hot ticket. You would wait and you would try to catch updates and you would try to get it. And now it's so super available, but at a lot of different places. That's just interesting that you don't hear that much about Wool Miza anymore. You used to hear about it all the time. Like it was the yarn to use. So this is just a 1 color shawl and uses about 600 yards. So I have a brand new sweater to show off today, and a very old item to show off today. So let's start with the long cardigan here. This one is super long, goes way down. It's one of those long cardigans that I've always wanted. And this is knit out of Miss Babs. This is the No Frills Cardigan by PetiteKnit. It came out in September of 2017. I have 3 skeins, the giant skeins of Miss Babs Yowza, in 3 different colorways. And so I was really struggling to figure out what to do with these 3 skeins that I stood in line at Rhinebeck for over the years. And what are you gonna do with it? And the skeins never match. Miss Babs has one-offs all the time. They're called Babettes. And so the skeins never match. So you're really kind of flying by the seat of your pants to make sure that things don't get too stripy for you. But this cardigan came out and was, oh gosh, $6.95, 45 DKK. So she is not from the US. Is a long cardigan, worked from the top down with raglan increases. It's stockinette stitch with the neck edges worked in rib, which is continued down along the front edges. At the end, there are afterthought pockets, which can be worked. It's designed to have 8 inches of positive ease. Mine does not. The measurements for the finished garment are given on the first page of the pattern. Before beginning the project, measure yourself to determine which size will be your best fit. And then she tells you how to fit the cardigan. And then because I'm so short, I can't make it as long because it literally probably would have been to my ankles or drug on the floor. So I'll put a picture in of how long it is. And then I put this yellow shirt underneath it. It looks a little brighter across here where there is some pooling. Than it does in real life. That's a little more blended, I think, in real life, but it is definitely lighter at the bottom and darker at the top. I did not knit all this stockinette because I hate stockinette. So thank you to Victoria for saying to me, yeah, I'll knit all that stockinette. I'm like, oh, I just, you know, it's back and forth and so boring. And this would have just sat on the needles forever because I'm just not good at picking up stockinette. So Victoria did it, which is lovely. She's a test knitter and sample knitter for other samples. And so, yeah, I just knocked on her little computer and said, hey. Otherwise, I have so many projects on the needles and I need to get some things off and moving along because I'm starting to feel a little overwhelmed with my lack of progress on things, and then also that slows down my design work. And so I just decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to pay somebody to do it so that I can move forward. Then let's talk about the second pattern. This one is a little iffy for me on whether or not most of the pattern is still available. So this is a Rowan plaid yarn. That's the name of the yarn. And this, I believe this pattern came out in one of their Rowan smaller booklets, maybe by Kim Hargraves, but I can't find the under sweater online. So this is 2 pieces. I don't think I've shared it before, but I feel like I talked about it a lot in my classes when I taught it, when I first started teaching my sweater class. And then, so I may have talked about it, whatever, I got it out. So you knit a regular pullover sweater with just ribbing and crew neck. And then I knit this other poncho to go over the top. And the poncho has, increases along the edge here and then they stop, and so it's not increased all the way around. So when you lay it flat, it kind of goes like this, and it's just a flat piece, so it's not in like a big circle, so it doesn't have a lot of material. There's not a lot of extra. It just kind of fits over the other sweater. It's perfect for the fall, so like when you're out and about and you just have the sweater on, and then it starts to get cooler in the evening, you can throw the coordinating one over the top. The original poncho that I remember did not have this like contrast color little ruffle thing along the bottom. So I think I added the contrast color, and I knit this so long ago, like many years. But the sweater still fits, and it's super soft yarn. I did try to look again this morning for the sweater. The poncho is called Tweed Poncho, I think, and there's no picture on Ravelry. There are no projects on Ravelry. It's by Martin Story, who also worked for Rowan. So it's so old that it's kind of predated. The pattern predated Ravelry. So that if you go back, sometimes there are just no pictures available. I think that the Rowan book is probably available, and I might have it in the basement in a box somewhere. I didn't dig that deep. But basically what it is a plain crew neck shirt, sweater, pullover. There's the word, Cori. A plain crew neck pullover, and then a turtleneck poncho over the top made out of the same yarn. This is a bulkier weight yarn, kind of an Aran to bulky, chunky weight yarn. Real soft, it has a lot of color in it. There's some gray, there's some light gray, and then kind of that purple. It's definitely a tweedy, but they called it plaid, Rowan plaid yarn. And I'm not sure why they called it plaid, because I think they did some plaid designs out of this yarn back in the day. But I mean, Rowan, they have so many lovely, beautiful patterns out there. So I thought, well, I was down looking for all of the sweaters that I haven't shared, and I have them stacked over here, and there's just a few left. We're getting to the end of the podcast sweaters and shawls that I haven't shared before. All right, don't tell my checkbook. Did you guys watch The Grocery Girls last week, 2 weeks ago, and see Tracy's Misurina sweater? And then go to Farmer's Daughter and buy the yarn, and then get it in the mail, and then buy the pattern, and then say to yourself, when do you think you're going to get this knit? So I went over and bought the Misurina yarn. that Tracy used in her sweater that she's knitting. I will try to put a picture in. The picture that she has on Ravelry, it's just kind of started at the top, but I bought the slow burn colorway and hers doesn't go to that dark, I don't think. And she was doing it with this, with a kind of a green, and the colors are all pretty flat. And in order to have high contrast, I wanted to do it in something that was just pretty and subtle. And you guys know I'm not a blue person, but with all of the colors to choose from, I didn't want to match her exactly because I thought that would be kind of, I guess she wouldn't care. She doesn't know me. I mean, she knows who I am, but so I didn't get the green. This is called Come and Get Your Love. I got 4 skeins to make that little short sleeved color work top. So thanks, Tracy. I think that cost me a pretty penny. I just had to have it. In that moment, I was like, that is gorgeous. It is stunning. And so we'll see if I get that cast on. I have this plan that when we go up to the lake for Memorial Day, that I'm gonna take some projects and cast them on while we're there, because it's my favorite thing to do is start new projects. And so far I think I have, 20 projects that I think I'm gonna take and start in 3 days. Just ridiculous. Cori, like, what are you thinking? And of course I wanna start the stuff that I've just purchased, but I have beautiful yarn that I also wanna do. So let's talk about what I am knitting. So I finally went back to my Soldotna, you guys. This week, I went back to my Soldotna. I ripped out the bottom color because there wasn't contrast. I was using yellow and orange, and it wasn't contrasting very well, and I didn't like it. And the most yarn that I have for this sweater is the yellow. And so I'm knitting it according to the pattern, but you can kind of switch out the colors. And I feel like the top of the sweater is really pink, and then the bottom was going to be really yellow. And I was like, well, it'll be okay. But now I have this dilemma. I finished this section right here. I split for the sleeves, so those are off. And then that didn't work out because I was making it bigger. So I started at a smaller size because my shoulders are small. Then I have a bigger bust and a bigger waist. So I was going to increase to a bigger size. So I was knitting the large. And when I counted, and then you set this aside because you're having this color problem, and you put it to the side because you can't deal with it because it's so challenging to just change 2 colors. Apparently it is. And so I knew I had to do the yellow and the blue, or I could have done orange and blue again, or pink and blue. But I have 2 skeins of yellow and 1 skein of blue, pink, and orange. And so I do not have enough pink to carry my pink at the bottom. And the bottom of this sweater is yellow with lice, little dots. So you knit 3 in yellow and then 1 orange, 3 yellow, 1 orange, 3 yellow, 1 orange. And then on the next row, you change the color and you do 3 yellow, 1 pink, 3 yellow, 1 pink. And I don't think I have enough pink to do that. So I think I'm gonna have to do 3 yellow, 1 orange, 3 yellow, 1 blue, which is gonna turn the bottom of the sweater very blue, which is not what I was thinking at all, it's fine, but I seem to have more blue left than I do pink because see, I use pink here, pink here, pink here. So I have more blue left. I'm gonna weigh them. And I bought it from Suburban Stitcher at ZK 4 years ago. So I don't even know if she still has the colorway for me to get another pink in the Suburban Stitcher. And it is a cropped sweater, and the bottom of the sweater can have color work or just ribbing. And so I could fudge on that because I think I would like to carry the pink and the orange down with the yellow and leave the top with the blue. So give me your thoughts. It's really hard to visualize. Let me show you the pattern. But you see down there how you get these dots and then you have the bottom can be a contrasting color, and how short hers is. I might have enough. I just don't know if I have enough pink. And I don't want to do all that body and get down and need like 3 more rows and not have enough pink. Should look and see in my stash if I have other pinks. I have some Suburban Stitcher pinks. And since it's one dot every fourth stitch. Yeah. But I made significant progress once I ripped out and just said, okay, Cori, it's going to be yellow and blue right there. It's fine. You can have yellow and blue right there. It's such a busy sweater. It's not going to matter. I just kind of wanted it to be a little more, I just feel like it should be pink. It should have been pink at the bottom, and I don't have two pinks. So I should have done more yellow at the top. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. And I am very concerned about the neck because the neck on this has been known to be a disaster. And look at how much an extra neck I have. And I tried to fix it while I knit it, so I may have to rip the neck off and re-pick back up the neck because the neck in that pattern has some issues. Then I think I'm gonna rip out my Brioche Slipover, the red one, the bulky, because it's way too wide. It is way too wide. And I kept saying, this is the problem I get into. When I have a little glitch in a pattern, I get frustrated and want to move on. And so I set them aside. And then when I go back to them, there's a problem. Like I have to fix something to make it better, which is what happened with the Soldotna. I was so happy to be working on that when I was in Arizona. And then I came home and the colorways weren't working. And so I set it aside for 2 months. Now the red Slipover is just way too wide at the top. And it's brioche and it's that blown yarn. So I don't know how well it's going to rip out. I think I need to rip it all the way back and start over in a smaller size on top. And I just don't want to do it. But I don't think I'm going to wear it this way. And I thought I could turn the edges under and tack it down. But then I think it's just going to be bulky because that's bulky yarn. So that was a little frustrating. So I have been working on purse knitting. And I thought I would share. This is my ANT hat. And I'm knitting with the Mayak held double. And it is lovely, you guys. Oh my gosh. I highly recommend this. It is making the nicest fabric. So I was knitting on the way to church this morning and I started doing the decreases for the top of the hat and they're not equal. I put stitch markers every 30 stitches and then knit around, and I wasn't really paying attention in the car. And it goes 30, 30, 30, 18. Like it wasn't even close to being. So I have to rip out a couple rows here, which is what I'm doing, just tearing out the little bit of decrease I did right there because they're not even. They were too close together. I was like, how did you know, sometimes in the car you're not, I don't know, we were talking and I wasn't paying close enough attention. We came back on the way home and I was like, wait a second, now they're not even. So I have to rip that out. But then I add the pink yarn down here and knit the pink this way. This has just been lovely to work with. I'm gonna knit some more with this Mayak. Then I cast on the purple. Remember the purple and white cowl I made in brioche? I'm gonna make a coordinating hat. So I got that number figured out how many stitches to cast on and got the setup row for the brioche hat. So that will become my purse knitting and I'm just holding it with white. So I got that and the orange one was getting ready for the decreases. So that was lovely. My new Interweave Knits came in the mail. Does anybody else still get the Interweave Knits hard copy magazine? Got to support one of the few magazines still left in the industry, right? It's got a lot of lovely summer tops in it. So if you're looking for to knit a summer top, I would say, yeah, it's definitely worth. It has, you know, and then there's a whole swatch study for summer yarns in it where she talks about all the different summer yarns that are out there. These are not my colors, but that's kind of a cute summer top. Just easy. Easy. There's ones with lace. Yeah. and texture. Yeah. That one has a really cute, like cabled edge around the sleeve. Can you see that right there? Yeah. It's got this cute little cabled edge around the sleeve and the neck. So that's really cute. I'm not a huge lace knitter. Yeah, that's cute. So that came in the mail. I always like to read the ravelings at the end, the little story that someone writes in. I've always meant to send a couple of articles into them for that, but I never have done it. And then this came in the mail. This has been in my Amazon wish list for a year, and eventually I just said, Cori, just buy it so you get it. So this is Colors by Kristen, How to Design Your Own Beautiful Knits. That is not really why I purchased it. I love Kristen Nicholas's aesthetic. She's very 1980s colors and color work, even, or 90s, I guess. But I just love her stuff. And so I want to knit these two sweaters for me. I think they're amazing. I love how these little girls are styled. It's exactly how I dress, with a dress and leggings and bright colored boots. And so I want to make those. They're not written for adults. Of course they're not, but I will knit them. They're just all over color work. So I got this as a used library book, and it came with a little plastic film. And I was gonna say, where did it come from? It came from the Laurel County Public Library. I don't know where that is. Do they have a stamp in here that tells me where? Laurel County Public Library. Nope. This came out in 2009. And it's just all color, the whole thing. Like, here's her stack of items. And like, that speaks to my soul. It is just so me. I watched a podcast. Let's go, we're gonna jump forward here. I watched a podcast this weekend called The Pine Cottage. April 23, 10 knitting podcasts I'm loving right now. Someone sent it to me. And I am not one of the 10 podcasts that she is watching right now, which is fine. But I started watching her, and I know why I'm not one, and why she picks 10 gentle knitters who knit in gray and cream and beige and are quiet and soft and maybe a little introverted. She does say she likes to see into people's houses and to see the podcasters, you know, what they have in their house. And apparently this podcaster, the Pine Cottage, gave a tour maybe of her house. And then she likes Danish Musings, a knitting episode, 2 sweaters, words for beginning intimidated knitters, and yarn love from New York City. That's the name of the whole podcast, Danish Musings. And so then I went and watched her podcast, and she's very gentle and very quiet and very thoughtful, really thinking about things. And I loved some of the thoughts she had about beginning knitting and being intimidated to knit a sweater and feeling overwhelmed by the directions in a pattern, and how we should see that as an opportunity and not as a stopping point. And yeah, she's very thoughtful. But her sweaters are all these beautiful, oversized, held with mohair, soft white, cream, blush pink sweaters. And I was just like, yep, that is not what I got going on in this house. So I did watch her, but it was just interesting to me. I want to appreciate that aesthetic of someone who has an all white house with white everything and like hardwood floors or plain floors with no rugs on them. And then that, just like that whole minimalist look. And that is just so not how I can live. I mean, I've been looking around at the walls of my house thinking, could I paint my walls? Could I paint some of my walls more white? And my house could be lighter, brighter. I moved in 2006. And this was a parade home. so we couldn't find a house. It was kind of right at the end of 2006, at the height of the market before the crash, right? And so people were getting money for houses that they couldn't afford, and big houses were, getting bigger and bigger. The builder's wife was the designer, and she picked all of the things, what do you call it, the decor in the whole house, like the light fixtures and I never would have done the colors that she did ever, right? Like I never would have picked the soft, gentle tones and the things. I love what she did. So like this hutch is built into this wall. This is my dining room. It's a small square dining room. So I have a tall square table in the center of it, like a game table or puzzle table. And this is built in, and see how it's like cream, but it's kind of distressed. That is the color of my island in my kitchen. And the island is this cream and has a black, like granite, marble, whatever, countertop. It's black with some tones in it, but dark. But the cabinets and the counter around the two sides of the kitchen are dark cherry and brown, tan countertops. I would never have mixed and matched that, right? But it works. But I came from a kitchen in Virginia that had white cabinetry and white countertops. It was all white, right? And then we came here and it was very muted. This room is painted like a dark browny green, khaki, dark khaki. I was going to call it poop. But it's like a darker khaki, and it has sand in the finish. Like you just would never pick that, right? Like it's rough texture. It's very pretty, but I would never have picked it. And so I have had to lighten up this house. All that to say, I have had to lighten up this house with colors and hanging things on the walls that are brighter and have some color to them. But after seeing this gal and then the aesthetic of this woman, this Danish woman with her white in her background and her white hutch and her white chairs, and you could see the light colored floor behind her and I think a white table. I was just like, wow, it would lighten up my house a lot if I went with a lighter color, because most of my house I would say is painted light khaki, and but I do have white ceilings, but I don't think they would probably be called pure white. But like people are going with gray now. They're doing gray, that gray composite flooring, like vinyl flooring and stuff. And my sister-in-law did that in her house. She put in the gray. I don't know. I love my porch because it's the brightest part of my house. And I painted it gold, like not yellow, but like a gold color. It was light green, like pale, soft green, which kind of coordinated with the khaki. But yeah, I had that painted, the porch painted. So it's just interesting to me how people are affected by color and how this aesthetic of this minimalist, classic, like just this cardigan done in like a cream would be totally people's aesthetic, plain cream. And I'm like, I'm going to do that in some of my wild Miss Babs. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't make myself. And it's just like some of you say, I could never wear the colors you wear, right? Like you just being comfortable in it. That's how I would feel in it. So it was just an interesting podcast to watch. And then I went over and watched this Danish Musings gal, who's just her last maybe 6 podcasts have been about knitting. Prior to that, it was more of a vlog, I think, from what I understand. And the other podcasters that she's watching, I think I subscribed to all but one of them. So there are only 2 that I wasn't aware of. And there are so many new podcasts out there. It's crazy. My biggest problem with watching other people's podcasts is I do a lot of comparison. I sit and think, oh, look at their editing. Oh gosh, they didn't do any editing. Oh, they're just like Tracy and Jody sit down and they have a live and they're talking to the people on the live. And I'm thinking, that's just lovely. You should maybe do that. And then And then I watch Kevin and Ray, and, you know, and then I watch Amy Beth. So she's the next one I watched. And Amy Beth's been podcasting for 10 years and doesn't do a lot of editing. And I love her. She's so smart and so open. And you know, she talks so openly about size and knitting for her size. But I watched her from the very beginning, and I sent her a pillow this week, and I figured she'd probably show it on the podcast, and so she did, because I got a thank you note from her in the mail. And I had talked to her. I sent her a letter just saying that, you know, to podcast for 10 years, I know she has a business, but that's incredible to put in that kind of time and energy. And she has a Patreon now, so that helps support her and her small business. But I remember when Tova went to kindergarten, and Kylie was just a few years older than that. And I remembered that feeling of sending someone off to kindergarten, you know. And so when she had talked in the podcast about how she was sending her only child, a girl, off to kindergarten. And so I sent her a plant, and it was a little bamboo plant, like a lucky plant. And that was 10 years ago. Now her daughter just got accepted to college. That's incredible that I feel, and I've met her in person, and, you know, I've been together with her at Stitches Midwest, and she does like a friends little retreat thing, and she's been with Amber. They've done sewing and crocheting and stuff together at a little friends retreat, not that I was at, but that they went to. So I just feel like I've known Amy Beth for years, and so I watch other podcasts, and there's just something in you that goes, could I do a better job? Could I be better? Could I change things and you know, there's a thing about improvement, and then there's a thing about just comparison that can make you a little, right? So last week I asked everyone to subscribe. I said, would you please subscribe? There are 1,200 of you who don't subscribe to the podcast. And weirdly, I never follow that. Like, I don't really look that much. It's always there underneath your name, so it tells you how many subscribers you have. So I have 4.8. That's what it says, 4,800. And so this morning when I was getting ready to do the podcast, and what was I looking at? I don't know. I was on YouTube, and I went to my channel, which is behind the scenes, so you wouldn't see it. It's where you upload and stuff. And I went over to my channel, and I lost 6 subscribers in the last 29 days. You can't look at that, right? Like, that'll just gut with your head. Like, that just makes you like, what did I do? Why would you unsubscribe? I mean, it takes initiative to go in and unsubscribe to someone's podcast, like that you don't want to watch it anymore, right? And it hurts. Like, you feel like, wow, what did I do? I asked people to subscribe and literally lost 6 subscribers. So I can't look anymore. I'm not going to look. And I don't care. I love the 1,300 of you who are literally always here. I could never say in my real life that I have 1,300 friends, right? So the fact that I have 1,300 people that show up and watch, or 1,200 people or 1,100 people, it's usually right in there. Sometimes it's higher. It depends on the time of year and when it comes out. But yeah, you just can play with that in your brain. I am not asking for you to say, oh, Cori, leave everything the same, and we love you, whatever. That, please don't do that. I'm just talking off the top of my head, as I do, about that whole comparison game, and watching this young lady put out this thing that says the 10 podcasts that I love to watch right now. And they were all this soft, gentle aesthetic, which I can never be. I would never just all of a sudden try to start talking to you like this and saying, how is your week going? How is everybody doing? Like, I just don't have that. I mean, I could be gentle, but it wouldn't be me. So yeah, I wouldn't do that. It was just funny. Okay, let's just move along. Just move along. What else did I watch this week? I've been watching The Diary of a CEO. Have you seen him? His name is Steven. And he was a CEO of a made millions. He's a young man. And he is trying to just improve his life by talking to people who are experts in the industry. And so I watched the last two. The one I watched about with Jessie Inchauspé is the scary new research on sugar and how they made you addicted to it. And she talks about glucose and 10 tips to keep your glucose levels from spiking. One of them is like veggies first. Always have veggies, and what order to eat your meal in to help you not have a glucose spike. Different things like that was very informative, very interesting, because I think I glucose spike all day because I love the starch, pasta, bread, sugar. So I kind of tend to glucose spike all day, and then that can really affect your hormones, your gut, as well as your weight. And so it's not about weight loss as much as just maintaining your glucose levels. So that was very interesting. And then the next one that popped up, Alex Cooper, who I'd never heard of, and she's the world's #1 female podcaster. Didn't know who she was. So she is a 28-year-old, been podcasting since 2018, and she and her roommate talked about sex on their podcast a ton. And then after several years, she and her roommate kind of broke up where the podcast was going because it got so huge. The podcast got millions and millions and millions of views, and all the young people in the world were listening to it. And so they kind of went their separate ways, and she just signed a $6 million or $60 million deal with Spotify to do a podcast. Like, huge. And now she's doing interviews instead of just talking with her roommate about sex and the guys they've dated and stuff like that. So it was a lot of graphic content that people were coming back for to see how naughty they would get, right, basically. And she said, you can't sustain that over time. You don't have that kind of content over time, which is what I'm feeling too, right? Like, after 4 years, what kind of content can I generate to continue to put myself out there week after week after week, where I would be engaging and make you motivated, inspired to do something, right? Like, it's really hard. You kind of start to invent things to try to make it happen. So it was interesting. I've never listened to her podcast, but it was an interesting one. So you might want to check out The Diary of a CEO. It's on YouTube. Then what did I watch? So I've been watching a lot of late night TV. My husband's going to bed earlier and earlier and watching a car show, his favorite car show, in bed before he falls asleep. And I've been staying up with the Chev. So I watched Return to Me. It was about a woman who needs a heart transplant. It came out in the year 2000. It had Minnie Driver and Helen Hunt and David Duchovny and Carroll O'Connor, who was Archie Bunker, and James Belushi. I mean, it was very old, but it was a great movie called Return to Me. Someone had told me to watch it. It was on my list of movies I'm supposed to watch that I keep in my phone. So I did watch that. Then I watched Somebody I Used to Know, and that is a woman goes back home from LA to try to rekindle an old flame on the eve of his wedding. I did not love this as far as, like, who does that? Who says, this guy was my old flame, he's getting married, and I'm going to go back to town and show up? It really wasn't like the Hallmark movie thing that you would expect, where they run into each other in town and then they get together. She goes back initially to say, I don't want him to get married. I mean, and you kind of hate her for that. You're like, what are you thinking? Like, he's getting married. He's moved on with his life. And, but it was a really good movie. Very good. Then I watched seasons 1 and 2 of Pillars of the Earth. Oh, you guys, that's one of my favorite books of all time. That whole series of them building the cathedrals during the Middle Ages. It is fascinating. And I had never watched, or if I did, I didn't finish. So Pillars of the Earth came out in part 1 and part 2, and there are multiple episodes in each part. So maybe 6 or 7. So good. Very fascinating. Really interesting to watch. So I watched that over 2 nights. Yeah. I told my mom and dad they should go over and watch it. Then I started watching The English with Emily Blunt. That came out last year. It's a Western. And we all know the wild, wild West was not a good place, not a happy place, and especially not a happy place for women. So it was a little graphic, a little violent. She does an excellent job. It was 1 season, and she comes to America to avenge something, and she ends up in Louisiana and doesn't realize the scope of America and where it is and like where she should be. And so she sails, and so she's got this long distance to travel, and she's carrying just a ton of money, which causes all kinds of problems. And, you know, she's in a stagecoach, and then she just gets left in this ghost town. But then she meets this Native American character who helps her. So I think it was 6 or 7 episodes, and I couldn't watch multiple of them because there is Native American brutality, and then there's brutality to her and to other people, and so I mean there are some real psycho weird people that did crazy crap. So I couldn't, you know, my parasympathetic nervous system gets a little over, and so I had to watch just a couple and then wait a night and whatever. Then my friend Mary Brown told me to watch the movie From Scratch about a chef who meets an artist in Italy. And that was really cute. Fun, engaging, well-developed characters. I liked it. Yeah, it was good. And then I watched the John Mulaney comedy special. It came up on Netflix like right after From Scratch. And sometimes I'm knitting and I just don't, it was like the next thing. So then I told Kylie that, and she's like, Mom, he's not a good person. We don't watch him. He had an affair, had a child with another woman while he was married, and we just don't watch him. And I'm like, okay. I didn't know that. So anyway, apparently but his comedy special was about an intervention and going to treatment. So obviously he was having drug and alcohol problems when they did the intervention, which probably led to the affair and the child being born while he was married. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know anything about him, but I thought the special was pretty good, but apparently we don't like him. And then last night, someone told me to start watching Darby and Joan. It's on Acorn, so I had to do a 7-day free subscription on Acorn. And this is a woman whose husband is supposed to be in Spain, and he dies in Australia. And they've been married for 40 years or something, and she doesn't know why he was in Australia. He calls her and tells her he's in Spain at the beginning of the whole thing, and that he's coming home soon, and then she finds out he's dead. So like a year later, she goes off to try to find out what happened, and she meets this cop investigator, and they start solving some crimes together. So it's a little Murder, She Wrote, because the two of them start, like, they're trying to solve the crime of her husband, but along the way they're traveling around trying to follow his path, and they end up solving other crimes. So that part's a little kitschy, but I like both characters a lot, and I probably watched, I don't know, 3 of them last night when I started it. So yeah, Darby and Joan. Okay. So I saw a thing on Instagram this week I just want to share with you quick. You know how those psychologists and psychiatrists come up in your Instagram feed sometime in the reels, and they're talking about, you know, important life things and things that may have challenged you or made you the person you are, or whatever. And you watch a couple of them. So I watched this woman saying that she's an overshare and talks a lot, like me. And she says, I was told by a psychologist that I talk a lot and I overshare because you weren't heard as a child. And she says, no, I talk a lot and I overshare because I'm annoying. I was like, yes. It was not that I was not heard as a child. I was the eldest. I was heard. I was heard loud and clear as a child. I just talk a lot and overshare because I'm annoying and I don't realize how annoying that can be. And sometimes I have to tell myself, shut up and don't say anything and just listen in this group. Do not open your mouth for the next 10 minutes. I literally have to do that a lot. I have to say to myself, try not to chime in. I just want to blurt. I don't know what I didn't learn as a young person, that I shouldn't blurt and interrupt. And I try to say, if I interrupt, I try to say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But the thought pops into my head and out my mouth before I know I'm going to say it. So I thought that was funny on Instagram. I liked this gal. I was like, you're right. We're just annoying. Okay, special notes and things I have to tell you. Went to dinner with Kylie and Ross last weekend. How did we get together? Oh, because Kylie called on Sunday afternoon in a crisis and said, Mom, I need $1 million favor. And this was Sunday after I had not gotten anything done all day. It was crappy outside. I had to the trainer came. We did spend an hour with the trainer. Then I went to puppy playtime. Then I got home. The computer had not worked Friday. Saturday I went to Darn It Anyway with friends. That was lovely. I had a lovely time over there. And but I had like blown my weekend, right? And now it's getting to be Sunday at 5 o'clock and I haven't done the things that I wanted to get done. And the daughter calls and says, I need $1 million favor. And you say, okay. And she says, can you please drive to St. Paul? Which is 45 to 50 minutes. And I'm like, yep, we can. What's going on? Like, what happened? They needed to be out of their apartment at their house that they had been renting at 5 o'clock. The guy was coming over to do the walkthrough. And so they had gone over and they've been cleaning in the afternoon, cleaning up. And they had underestimated the amount of items that still needed to get out. So they had a pile at the curb and their car that they had driven over was full. Now, you might be thinking, well, then just drive it to your apartment, unload it, and go back over. But it was raining. She was very upset that they had not planned better. Because a lot of the stuff was his, and he had finals last week. And then they were just like, one of us can't sit at the curb and watch the stuff and in the rain, and we have to be out. We won't have a key. And I was just like, okay, we'll come. So then I go out in the garage. My husband says, you've been gone all day. I'll go. And I know he doesn't want to go because he had synod all weekend. So my husband is on the synod council. He's on the Minneapolis Synod Council. And it's a big position, like volunteer thing, right? But Friday and Saturday all day, he had been at meetings and in church all day. So he had not had a weekend either. So I know he doesn't want to go. And I said, okay, I'll call her back. So I call her back. I said, your dad will be there. And she's like, Mom, can you come? So she needs a more emotional support, not physical support. So I'm like, okay, this is emotional. She sounded teary, just like, I just need to get it. And they've had a kerfuffle with their landlord, and that's who's going to do the walkthrough. And so I know she's feeling upset because he's making them leave when he should be making the renter upstairs who's causing all the problem leave. But the renter upstairs has been there for 14 years and he's a jerk, but he pays his rent. Anyway, so I drive. I drive all the way over there. And I put the stuff in the car, and she's very upset. She's sitting out in the car because she doesn't want to deal with this guy who is showing the apartment to other people while they're not out yet. So there are 4 people in the house walking through, and she's like, I just had to get out of there. Like, I just can't watch while we're scrubbing and finishing up the kitchen. He's got people that are going through, and he's telling them, that the neighbor upstairs is no problem. And I just want to say it's a huge problem. Anyway, but then she's like, I take her back to her place. Stevie takes the other car, And then she's like, can I go out to eat with you guys? Because we had decided that we were just going to grab something out to eat because we didn't want to make anything. It was getting late in the day. Now it's even later. And Stevie has a paper to finish for his final. So he has to stay and do his paper. And she's like, he'll get it done better if I'm just not there. So we went out. That's what happened leading up to this, why we had this conversation. Kylie went to a appeals court dinner with her judge and the other clerk. And it, you know, it was like a big deal, kind of more formal, dress up, go to dinner, sit at the table. Judges are introducing you to all the other people that are there. And the speaker was Nicole Shaharsky, who is the co-head of the Mayor Brown's Supreme Court and appellate practice. And she focuses her practice on briefing and arguing cases in the U.S. Supreme Court. And the case that she represented was the U.S. women's soccer team gender equality case, which Kylie played soccer her whole life. Kylie loves the women's soccer team. Kylie was all about listening to this woman who's super smart, who argues before the Supreme Court, you know. And so she's telling us that night then all about how Thursday night she had gotten to go to this hoity-toity, very cool sit-down dinner. And, you know, she's talking about the people that she got to meet and how nice it was that her judge introduced her to every person that stopped by the table. And they're sitting at one of the head tables because they're the Minnesota appeals judges who buy a table, I assume, you know, kind of thing. But they're like up toward the front. I don't know. And she said the speaker was just phenomenal, right? So then Ross, I said, well, you got to tell Kylie. So Ross on Saturday was he's the secretary for the synod, and he heard Dr. Reverend Otis Moss, the pastor of Chicago's Trinity United Church of Christ, who espouses Black theology and speaks about reaching inner city Black youth, who is the Obama's pastor, who gave what Ross said was the best sermon talk he has ever heard in his entire life. So here are my two family members just going on and on about how they've just been filled up by these people. Ross said he told a story from the Bible that Ross hardly ever heard before. He said, it was about this, they were going to this town, and Jesus said, no, we're not going into the town. We're going to where the handicapped people are outside of the town. So they would, if someone was mentally incapacitated or whatever, they would put them outside of the town. This man was chained up and he had 4,000 demons. I'm not going to tell the story very well. And then he was obviously had all these demons, and then the demons were cast onto the pigs. Some black pigs were in this, and the pigs all ran into the sea and killed themselves because they couldn't handle the demons. And the demons had lived inside this man for all these years, and he had lived with it. I don't know. I'm doing a terrible job. Apparently, Dr. Reverend Otis Moss, who is a young African-American, not young, 40s-somethings. His father worked with Martin Luther King. Ross said it was just phenomenal. It was 45 minutes where you were just like he said, so dynamic, so empowering, so impressive, such an amazing speaker, but also message. He said it was just incredible. He's going to try to find out if it was recorded so that we could listen to it. But anyway, so both of my family members, I'm like, well, I watched a podcast. Yeah. Anyway, it's cool when you get to go to stuff like that, right? All right. I've been to puppy playtime a bunch. So we went up Thursday night. Kylie went with me. She wanted to see the puppies. So we went to puppy playtime in Maple Grove, which is quite a trek from my house, about 45 minutes up north. And then last Sunday afternoon, I went to puppy playtime in our trainer's backyard. It's been too rainy for her to have it every Sunday, but now she'll have it again today. So I will go back, and he is not afraid of anything. Chevy will just, yeah, he'll do it all. He sits on the box, he'll lay down in the box, anything for food. He'll smell the cone. He'll leave the toilet paper roll alone as long as you're giving him a treat and asking him to sit. Like all the things but he's still peeing. Last night he pooped and peed on the mudroom floor. He'd been out an hour before, and he doesn't tell us yet. And I had been holding him in my lap. We had taped the Kentucky Derby. We went out to dinner with friends. We came home. We watched it. He was sitting in my lap. I turned on something. I watched it for a while. Then he was getting kind of antsy. Sometimes he'll fall asleep in my lap. And so I put him in the mudroom for a minute. I was going to go to the bathroom, put my pajamas on. It was getting late. I came back out. I mean, it's right there. Yeah, he'd gone to the bathroom. I could smell it immediately. I was like, oh. So we're still working on but he holds overnight in his crate. So he's just choosing to go in the mudroom instead of telling us. And we're ringing a bell and we're saying potty all the time. So we just have to work on that. And then my next thing is my jaw update. So on Monday, I went and saw a new physical therapist. I am still having significant pain and trouble with my jaw. I can't open my mouth all the way. Like I'm supposed to go to the dentist, and there's no way I can open my mouth. And I'm sore here. My ear hurts, my neck, I'm sore. But I went to the supervisor said, if you ever make a decision to come back, this is who you should see. And so I decided, okay, I won't let her go in my mouth, and I'll talk to her because I'm still having trouble. And so I went and saw this woman, and she is the trainer for all the other physical therapists for TMJ. She's been doing it 35 years. She said this never should have happened. She couldn't believe the pictures. I'm trying to tell her, and then I'm like, no, you need to see the pictures. And she's like, okay. So I get my phone out, right? And she's kind of like, whatever, you're swollen. When she sees the picture, she's like, oh my God, what happened to you? Like, what was she doing in your mouth? And she was saying things she probably shouldn't have been saying because she's part of their department, but she's like, I will have a training. You will be a case study. I will retrain. This will become a thing. Like, I can't have this. She's very kind. She did some cranial massage, just gentle. And she told me that it could take 8 to 12 weeks for this soft tissue damage to get better, but that I should go see a different dentist because the one they referred me to is out of the network, which is, now we have a bill, an out-of-network bill. Anyway, so she's very, very kind, but I am still having jaw pain. So she says to me, only soft foods. Don't bite anything with your two front teeth. Don't bite into anything. Nothing hard, whatever. I'm like, okay. And then I said, I'm biting my lip all the time. Like, I'm just biting it all the time. So I've been putting a straw in my mouth, a cut little piece of plastic straw, and I hold it in my mouth. So I'm trying to train myself to not bite this part of my lip that is down. And she says to me, I don't think that biting your lip is your jaw trouble. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, no, I don't think that's part of it. I said, that's when it started. And she said, no. Are you on a new medication? And I said, well, I started a new antidepressant a while back. We've been through that. Been on an antidepressant since I was 29. I've done a bunch. But I was having all those side effects from the one that was working really well for me for 5 years. And I finally decided that I was doctoring for 2 and 3 other things. And so I decided to go off it and see if they went away, which they did. So now I started a new one last fall. But when you go off, you have to taper off. When you start anew, you got to taper up. So I started at 5, 10. Now I'm just kind of recently, in the last month or so, 2 months, went up to 20. And she said, some antidepressant psychotic medications can cause mouth tics. Are you kidding me? Like, can I not be that person? Can I not have the mouth tick? She said, I'm not saying that that's what it is because I'm not a doctor. I'm a physical therapist, but call your psychiatrist. So I just called my psychiatrist. I just seen her on Monday. And then I find out that the psychiatric nurse is out. And so the other one's handling all the stuff. And so I won't get a call back right away. So I call the pharmacist because I know her because, you know, medications all these years. And I say, Debbie, is there any chance? So she looks it up and she's like, well, lip smacking, grimacing, one other thing can be caused by it. It's very rare though. She said it's like it says it's in extreme cases. And she said, but I don't think chewing your lip. I don't think chewing your lip. And I said, well, I have this sore. I have like a callus sore, but not a cold sore, not like an open wound, but my tooth won't leave it alone. I'm thinking that's what it is, right? I'm like, you gotta be kidding. So I'm like, I know what I can do. I can go off my antidepressant, go down again and see if it goes away. Like even before she calls me back, I was on the other medication. I do much better in the spring and summer when it's light out and I can get outside and get sunlight in my eyeballs. Sorry, my hair is driving me nuts. Sticking to my forehead. So I reduced down. I will say it seems better. I don't seem as compulsive about it. But then I decided the last couple days that I should be putting something on that sore. Like, what is that sore? I've never seen anything like it. It's like a white. So I've been using a Breva, which is what I use if I get like a cold sore. And that has made it smaller. So anyway, aren't you glad you asked? None of you asked. None of you said, hey, Cori, how's your health? How's your low back? How's your joint pain? How's your lip? How's your jaw? We are tired of hearing about it. Just like my husband. He just looked at me this morning when I said, my back hurts. My back is so out of whack. I heard it in the shower when I bent over to the side. I went, oh, what did I do? It's a little better now, but I could tell it's like nothing ever goes wrong with him, ever. He never has a physical issue. And I know some of you have things that are way worse than what I have going on. That's what I have to keep telling myself, you know, it could be worse. I went to lunch with a friend and we talked about all this stuff. And she's very nice. She just listened and very kind to have a listening ear. Because sometimes that's all you want to do is just dump it, right? You just kind of want to dump it and be like, okay, now I'll move on. Then I started teaching beginning knitting this week, which is my favorite thing in the whole world, right? I love making new knitters. It's my favorite thing. You guys, the people across the street are getting their pool ready and I can't stop looking over there. I need to close that shade when I'm podcasting so that I don't look. But the guys are out there. The young guys are cleaning the pool. It must be a pool company because they're cleaning the pool. I can see them. There are 3 of them over there. Can you believe it? We're finally going to get pool time in Minnesota and warm weather. Be good. The giveaway this week, I have a Daisy bag, Daisy Girl bag to give away this week. So Heather Wilson, you are the winner for the Daisy Girl bag this week. You wrote that you had a birthday just a few days before mine and that it wasn't all that great. And mine wasn't that either, remember? And that you went over and bought my washcloth pattern, which was really nice of you. So you didn't know that I had a washcloth pattern, which is good. I mean, that was funny. So there you go. Get in touch and give me your name and address, and you can send that to iRockKnits@gmail.com or on Instagram or on Ravelry, iRockKnits. You can send me a message with your address, and I will put that in the mail to you. Okay, I have one more little thing to share this week. When I was in Colorado, I wore my little shorty socks that I made years ago. And these are made out of the Fixation yarn. And it is elastic yarn that has elastic in it. I don't know if you can still get this yarn, but I have seen yarn at some of the local yarn shops that they still have it, but I don't know if it's still like readily available. This has a little picot turning edge. These are the best little socks to wear in my tennis shoes, like with my dresses and stuff. And so I thought I would mention it because if you've never used that fixation yarn, it really does have lovely stretch. It's just very elastic and was not difficult to knit with. Just knit little white. I mean, I would say I knit these maybe 10 years ago. And I wear them in the summer, and I took them along to Colorado and wore them with my little dress with the little white picot trim. Can you see how that? Yeah. So I laid them on the table when we came home, and then I forgot to talk about them last week, and I got socks laying on the dining room table, but whatever, they're clean. So yeah, I thought that I would share that with you. That would be on my project page. I don't know what pattern I used. I'm assuming I just used a standard vanilla sock pattern. Let's do the audiobooks. I have 4. I read The Quilter's Apprentice. Really good. I am not a sewist. I loved it. It was really good. She's Jennifer Schiavarini. She's done a bunch of books, and so I assume those of you that are quilters or sew quite a bit might recognize her name. But this young girl moves to town with her new husband who gets a job, and they meet this old woman who has this estate that she needs cleaned up, and she's going to sell it. And they are going to, her sister has died who lived there, and then in order for this young woman to work there, she asks her for quilting lessons. And there's a quilting shop in town, and she joins the quilting guild. But really a good novel, like not super lighthearted and whimsical, just really a well-developed story. I very much liked it. Then I finished The Final Gambit by Jennifer Lim Barnes, which is the second in the series. And I didn't love it. I loved that first book so much. And the second, I think it was too far apart from the second book. I was trying to remember the characters, who the family members were, and I hate that when you should have read the books closer together. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but my brain. So I didn't love it as well as the first book. The first book, she has to, follow all those puzzles and the clues, and she's inheriting billions of dollars. This one ends really nicely, and I got into it, but it just took me a while. Like the first book, I just couldn't put down. This one, I couldn't get started because I couldn't remember who all the boys in the family were and all that. So I would have just liked it if I'd have read them closer together. And then Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly. Okay, you guys, you all need to go read this. This is the first book that I have ever read where the pronouns for a non-binary person were used throughout the entire book. And they're using they, them. And it was so good. And it taught me so much. So it's a story of a person goes on a cooking show, and at the beginning of the show, she comes out as non-binary, and she wants people to use her pronouns, preferred pronouns. And, there are people on the show who are like, what are you talking about? Of course we're not going to use different pronouns. How, what were you born? And then there is another young woman on the show who is recently divorced, and they become friends, and they go through this cooking show together. But I have never read a book with a person that was non-binary as the main protagonist. And I can use those pronouns. I don't have any problem, but it's hard, right? Like you have to learn, you have to practice, and you have to do a good job at it. And reading this book really helped me to understand the whys and hows. And by the end of the book, it wasn't, different or strange to me at all. It just seemed so easy to read, and I highly recommend that if you're someone who struggles with the ability to because if you don't have someone in your life that you need to use those pronouns for, you don't get practice. And so you won't get better at it. So the book was really quite good. Then I listened to The How and the Why by Cynthia Hand. This is a young adult novel about a girl that is adopted. I think this won awards or something because I have seen it in a number of places, and she's coming to terms with deciding whether or not she wants to find her birth mother and then going to college, and if she can get into Juilliard or where she wants to go to school. Yeah, it's quite good. Okay, and then I watched the book that I had just finished reading not that long ago, that book called If I Stay, about the girl who gets in the car accident with her whole family and is in the hospital in a coma. And she's telling the story from what she's seeing in the hospital, even though she's in a coma. And it was so good and so well done. I didn't realize that there had been a movie made. So the movie came out in 2016 or something, so it's been around for a while. So I watched that, and when you know that the whole family gets in a car accident, it's kind of hard to watch at the beginning. You're like, I mean, that's what the whole thing is about. But yeah, so the movie was good too. So I would recommend reading the book, because the book, that If I Stay, she's trying to decide kind of if she should live or die, right? Like, she's understanding because she's hearing that her parents have passed away and that her brother's in surgery, and you know, she's just in that in-between stage, and the African-American nurse is there next to her telling her, this is all you have to decide, you have to choose, you have to fight. It was really a good story. So then I watched that movie. So I guess I watched a lot of TV in the last 2 weeks. It's kind of, it's been so cruddy outside. I haven't been walking because not this week. So I think that's all I have for you guys this week. I'm almost all done with my teaching gigs. We're going to go fishing, which means I'm going to go knitting up north in the cabin. I usually get tons of knitting done because I don't fish much. And he goes out from early morning till late in the evening, and I just sit in the cabin and knit. And so it should be lovely for Memorial Day. I will be at Shepherd's Harvest. So if any of you are at Shepherd's Harvest next Saturday, I'm going to go with a group of friends. And so come up and say hi. I would love to see anybody who watches the podcast that I maybe haven't met, or you've been watching for a while. So come up and say hi if you see me there, or I'll see you. I think that's all I have. The table's pretty empty here. I don't think I have much more to share. So until next time, keep it colorful. Come in for your hug with that darn shoulder that won't lift up. Well, come in for your crooked hug. I love you all. Be inspired. Go cast on something new. Make something fun and interesting, something that sparks joy or brings you great inspiration. I'll see you next time. Bye.